The crystalline spires of the draconic High Council chamber pierced the violet sky of Celestia Prime like ancient fingers reaching for the stars. Inside, 12 dragon elders perched on platforms of polished obsidian, their scales shimmering with the light of 1,000 distant suns. This sacred chamber had witnessed countless diplomatic sessions, trials, and judgments over millennia. But today was different. Before them stood Zora, a human girl no more than 16 standard years old, her dark skin covered in the dust of distant worlds, her clothes bearing the wear of long space travel. She stood barefoot on the temperature-regulated floor, her brown eyes reflecting the bioluminescent crystals that lined the chamber walls. High Elder Varric, his scales the color of dying stars, leaned forward on his perch. "You breached the sanctity of our chamber, human. Few of your kind have ever set foot in these halls. Speak your purpose." The other dragon elders shifted, their massive bodies creating whispers of movement that echoed through the vast chamber. Some displayed obvious disdain, others curiosity. Zara took a deep breath, steadying herself. "I need help," she said, her voice clear despite her exhaustion. "My colony ship, the Starweaver, was attacked by pirates in the Outer Rim. I'm the only survivor." A low rumble of discussion filled the chamber. Elder Nixus, her scales shimmering like liquid mercury, spoke next. "The Outer Rim is beyond our jurisdiction, child. Why come to us?" Zara's stomach growled loudly in response, the sound amplified by the chamber's acoustics. Several dragons tilted their heads in surprise. "I'm hungry," she admitted, her cheeks flushing. "And something called me here. Dreams. Visions. I followed them across 17 systems." High Elder Varric's eyes narrowed, ancient pupils contracting to thin slits. "Visions, you say?" He exchanged meaningful glances with the other elders. "Describe them." "Stars arranging themselves into patterns. A voice speaking in a language I didn't understand but somehow knew. And..." She hesitated. "Dragons made of light, pointing the way here." The chamber erupted in concerned murmurs. Elder Carthix, his obsidian scales absorbing all light, rose suddenly. "The stellar prophecy," he growled. "It cannot be. Not now, not through a human child." High Elder Varric raised a massive clawed hand for silence. "Child, your hunger we can address easily enough." He gestured to an attendant, who quickly disappeared through a side entrance. "But these visions, they may signal something far more significant." The attendant returned with a bowl of steaming food, synthetic protein cubes and nutrient-rich vegetation. Zara's eyes widened, but she waited for permission before accepting it. As she ate, the dragons continued their discussion in their ancient tongue, their words carrying the weight of centuries. "The timing aligns with the celestial convergence," Elder Nixus noted. "And the human bears the mark." Zara looked up from her bowl, confused. "Mark? What mark?" High Elder Varric descended from his perch, his massive form casting a shadow over Zara. "There," he said, pointing to her left wrist. "The birthmark in the shape of the 3 stars of creation." Zara glanced at the mark. She'd had since birth, 3 small dots arranged in a perfect triangle. She'd never thought it significant before. "The prophecy speaks of a bridge between species," Elder Carthix rumbled reluctantly. "One who would come in our darkest hour, bearing the mark of creation, guided by visions of the Ancient Ones." "But surely not a human child," another elder protested. Our laws," High Elder Varric interrupted, "were written by those who saw further than we do. The prophecy makes no mention of species or age." He turned back to Zora. "Tell me, child, in your visions, did you see the shadow?" Zora's hand trembled slightly as she set down her empty bowl. "Yes," she whispered. "A darkness moving between the stars, consuming everything in its path. Is it real?" The chamber grew deathly quiet. High Elder Varric's expression grew grave. "The Void Collective. They have returned from the spaces between galaxies, and they hunger for more than food, child. They hunger for existence itself." Elder Nixus glided down to join them. The prophecy warns that when the Void Collective returns, only the Starchild can unite the species of the galaxy against them. One who understands both hunger and hope, desperation and determination. Zara stood straighter, despite her exhaustion. What happens now? Now, High Elder Varric said, his voice resonating with ancient power. We begin the trials. If you are indeed the one spoken of in prophecy, you must be prepared. The fate of all species hangs in the balance. As if in response, the crystalline spires above began to hum with energy, their light pulsing in rhythm with Zora's heartbeat. The mark on her wrist grew warm, and for a moment she saw again the dragons made of light from her visions, now superimposed over the physical dragons before her. She was no longer just a refugee from a destroyed colony ship. She was no longer just hungry and lost. She was something more, a bridge between worlds, a key to survival, a spark of hope in the face of cosmic darkness. And as the Dragon Elders began their ancient preparations, Zora realized that her journey, their journey, was just beginning. The preparation chamber gleamed with bioluminescent crystals, their light casting ethereal patterns across Zora's face as she donned the ceremonial robe provided by the Dragon Elders. The fabric seemed to shift colors with her movements, like starlight through a prism. Her mark, the 3 stars of creation, pulsed with a faint blue glow. The trials will test more than your physical strength, Elder Nixus explained, her mercury scales rippling as she moved. They will probe the depths of your spirit, your resolve, your very essence. High Elder Varric stood nearby, his ancient eyes studying her carefully. There will be 3 trials, as decreed by the first dragons. The trial of memory, the trial of sacrifice, and the trial of unity. Few have survived them all. Are you prepared to begin? Zara squared her shoulders, pushing away her fear. I'm ready. The first trial chamber was a vast dome of black crystal, its surface reflecting countless stars. As Zara stepped into its center, the floor beneath her feet became transparent, giving the impression of standing in open space. The Dragon Elders withdrew to observation platforms, their forms barely visible in the darkness. The trial of memory begins, Varric's voice echoed. Face your past, child. All of it. The stars around her began to move, coalescing into images. The Starweaver, her home for 16 years, bursting into flames as pirate ships tore through its hull. She saw faces, her parents, her friends, her community, all consumed by the void of space. The memory was so vivid she could feel the heat of the explosions, hear the screams of the dying. No, she whispered, falling to her knees. I can't watch this again. You must. Elder Nixus's voice was firm but gentle. The past shapes us, but it need not define us. Something stirred within Zora, a warmth emanating from her birthmark. As she watched the memories play out, she began to see something she hadn't noticed before. Patterns in the chaos, purpose in the pain. The pirates' ships moved with unnatural precision, their attacks too coordinated for common raiders. They were searching for something, she realized aloud. For me, the Void Collective knew about the prophecy. The stars shifted again, showing her the 17 systems she traversed to reach Celestia Prime. But now she saw them differently, not as random points of refuge, but as waypoints, each one strengthening her, teaching her, preparing her for this moment. The mark on her wrist flared brightly, and suddenly she could feel the cosmic energy flowing through the chamber, through the dragons, through herself. She stood, no longer drowning in grief but drawing strength from it. The past is not my enemy, she declared, her voice steady. It's my foundation. The star images faded, leaving the chamber in respectful silence. High Elder Varric's voice carried a note of approval. The first trial is complete. You have faced your memories and found wisdom in pain. But the trial of sacrifice demands more. The chamber transformed, the star field replaced by swirling clouds of cosmic gas and dust. From these clouds emerged shapes, possibilities, potential futures. Zara saw herself wielding immense power, respected and feared throughout the galaxy. She saw wealth, influence, the ability to reshape reality itself. The power of the Starchild comes with a price, Elder Karthix explained, his obsidian scales absorbing the ethereal light. To unite the species against the void, you must give up any dream of personal glory. You must become a vessel for something greater than yourself. Zara watched the tempting vision swirl around her. But if I had power, I could prevent others from suffering as I have. I could protect. Power corrupts. Elder Nixus interrupted. Even the noblest intentions can twist into tyranny. The prophecy speaks of a bridge, not a ruler. Understanding dawned in Zora's mind. She reached out to the glorious futures displayed before her, then deliberately closed her fist. The visions shattered like glass. I choose to serve, not to rule, she said firmly. The power isn't mine to keep. It's meant to be shared, to unite us all against the darkness. The mark on her wrist pulsed again, and the swirling clouds parted to reveal the final challenge, the trial of unity. The chamber filled with representations of various species, humans, dragons, and countless other races from across the galaxy. All were turned away from each other, separated by eons of mistrust and conflict. The Void Collective feeds on division, High Elder Varric explained. Show us how you would unite those who have never known unity. Zara felt the cosmic energy surge through her mark, but this time she didn't try to control it. Instead, she opened herself to it, becoming a conduit. The energy flowed from her into the chamber, creating bridges of light between the different species. As it touched each representation, their memories and experiences flowed through her, their hopes, their fears, their dreams. We're all connected, she gasped, overwhelmed by the shared consciousness. The void doesn't just threaten one species, it threatens the very fabric of existence. We can only face it together. The light grew brighter, and the representations began to turn toward each other, their ancient barriers crumbling. Through their shared connection, they felt what Zara felt, the fundamental unity of all living things, the strength that comes from diversity, the power of choosing hope over fear. When the light finally faded, Zara stood in the center of the chamber, exhausted but transformed. The mark on her wrist had evolved, the 3 dots now connected by lines of silvery light. High Elder Varric descended to stand before her. The trials are complete. You have faced your past without being consumed by it. You have rejected power in favor of service. And you have shown us the path to unity. He bowed his massive head. You are indeed the Starchild of prophecy. But even as the dragon elders gathered to acknowledge her, a shadow passed across the chamber's crystalline walls. The Void Collective was moving, and time was running out. Zara's real trial, uniting the galaxy against an enemy that threatened all existence, was just beginning. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, ancient forces stirred, awaiting the confrontation to come. The grand archives of the Dragon Council hummed with ancient energy as Zara studied the historical texts projected in shimmering holographic light. 2 weeks had passed since her trials, and while many of the Dragon Elders had accepted her role as the prophesied Starchild, others saw her presence as a threat to their millennia-old traditions. Elder Drakon, his scales the color of tarnished bronze, watched her from the shadows. Unlike the others, he had never bothered to mask his contempt. You read our sacred texts like a child with a picture book, he sneered. Do you truly believe you can comprehend the weight of ages? Zara didn't look up from the floating glyphs. Knowledge doesn't belong to any one species, Elder Drakon. The prophecy proves that. The prophecy, he spat the word like venom, is being misinterpreted. Our kind ruled the stars before humans learned to make fire. We need no bridge between species. The mark on Zora's wrist flared in response to his hostility, casting shifting patterns across the archive walls. She had learned to recognize these reactions as warnings. Something darker than mere prejudice drove Drakon's hatred. High Elder Varric entered the chamber, his ancient eyes taking in the tension. The Void Collective has consumed 3 more systems in the Outer Rim, he announced gravely. Their advance accelerates. Zara's heart clenched. How many casualties? Millions. They leave nothing alive. Varric's scales dimmed with sorrow. The Council of Allied Species convenes tomorrow. They must be made to understand the threat we face. Dracon's scales bristled. You would have us parade this human child before the Council. The dragons have protected these realms for eons. We need no help from lesser beings. Pride blinds you, Dracon, Varric warned. The Void Collective cannot be defeated by any single species. Unity is our only hope. But Dracon was already storming from the chamber, his claws leaving scorched marks on the crystalline floor. Zara watched him go, then turned to Varric. He's not alone in his feelings, is he? No, Varric admitted. There is a growing faction among our kind who see change as a threat. They would rather face the void alone than admit we need help. The mark on Zora's wrist pulsed again, and with it came a vision. Shadow shapes moving through the dragon city, whispered conversations in dark corners, preparations being made in secret. She gasped as the images faded. They're planning something, she warned. Tomorrow, at the council meeting. Before Varric could respond, Elder Nixis rushed into the chamber, her mercury scales reflecting urgent patterns. High Elder, we've detected unusual energy signatures in the lower city. Someone has accessed the ancient weapons vaults. Varric's eyes narrowed. Dracon wouldn't dare. He would, Zara interrupted, the mark now burning on her wrist. He'll try to stop the council meeting. He'd rather see everything destroyed than accept change. The chamber trembled as distant explosions echoed through the city. Varric stretched his wings. Nixis, evacuate the archives. Zara, come with me. If Dracon has truly turned traitor, we'll need the Starchild's power to stop him. They raced through crystalline corridors as chaos erupted around them. Dragon guards clashed in the air above the city, some loyal to the council, others following Dracon's rebellion. Energy weapons, relics of ancient wars, carved burning paths through the violet sky. On a high balcony, they found Dracon waiting with a dozen followers. He held a pulsing crystal sphere that made Zora's mark burn painfully. The null sphere, Varric breathed. You fool, that weapon nearly tore reality apart during the last convergence. Better oblivion than submission to lesser beings. Dracon snarled. He raised the sphere high, and reality itself began to warp around it. Zara felt the power of her mark responding, reaching out to the cosmic energies that bound existence together. She understood now why the prophecy had chosen her, not for her strength, but for her ability to see beyond ancient hatreds and unite divided peoples. You're right about one thing, Elder Dracon, she said, stepping forward as energy crackled around her. The dragons did rule the stars once, but the stars have changed. Everything changes. That's not weakness, it's evolution. The mark blazed like a newborn sun, its light forming a bridge between past and future, between species and traditions, between pride and progress. The null sphere's power met her own, two forces of creation locked in momentary balance. But where the sphere sought to destroy, to unmake, to preserve the past through annihilation, Zara's power worked to unite, to build, to forge something new from the best of the old. The mark's light spread, touching each dragon present, showing them visions of possible futures. Futures where all species stood together against the darkness, where ancient wisdom merged with new ideas, where change meant growth rather than loss. One by one, Dracon's followers lowered their weapons, their scales dimming in shame. Only Dracon himself remained unmoved, his hatred burning brighter than ever. With a roar of defiance, he hurled the null sphere directly at Zara. The mark's power reached out, not to destroy the sphere, but to transform it. The weapon that had nearly shattered reality became a crystal of pure possibility, its destructive energy converted into potential for change. Dracon, his last weapon lost, backed away toward the balcony's edge. This isn't over, he growled. The old ways will prevail. The dragons will rule alone, or we will welcome the void's embrace. He spread his wings and launched himself into the chaos above the city, disappearing into the violet sky. But his words hung in the air, a promise of conflicts yet to come. Varric placed a gentle claw on Zora's shoulder. You showed mercy when you could have destroyed them. That, more than any prophecy, proves you are the bridge we need. Zora watched the transformed, null sphere pulse with new purpose. We can't force unity, she said softly. We can only show them a better path and hope they choose to take it. But as emergency signals flared across the city and reports of the Void Collective's advance continued to pour in, she wondered if they would have time for choices. Tomorrow's council meeting would determine whether the galaxy's species could overcome their ancient divisions in time to face the greater threat. And somewhere in the violet sky above, Draken gathered his followers, preparing to ensure that such unity would never come to pass. The council chamber of allied species stretched like a vast amphitheater beneath the triple suns of Celestia Prime. Representatives from 100 worlds filled the tiered seats, crystalline beings from the silicon worlds, energy forms pulsing in containment fields, scaled and furred creatures of all descriptions. At the center, Zara stood with High Elder Varric, her ceremonial robe rippling with starlight. The Void Collective approaches. Varric's voice resonated through the chamber. Already they have consumed 3 systems. We cannot stand alone. A quantum collective consciousness, speaking through a matrix of light, pulsed with skepticism. The dragons have always claimed supremacy among species. Why seek alliance now? Because pride will not save us. Zara stepped forward, her mark blazing. The void doesn't discriminate. It hungers for all existence. Suddenly, alarms blared through the city. Above, the violet sky darkened as reality itself seemed to tear. Through the breach came Dracon's rebels, led by their bronze-scaled leader clutching an ancient artifact, the Convergence Gate. If we cannot rule, Dracon's voice boomed, then none shall rule. The gate began to pulse, its power reaching across dimensions. Behind it, something stirred in the darkness between stars. The leading edge of the Void Collective, drawn by the gate's energy. Zara's mark burned as understanding flooded her mind. He's trying to accelerate their arrival, she gasped. He'll sacrifice everything to prove his point. The council chamber erupted in chaos as representatives fled or prepared for battle. But Zara stood her ground, the mark's power flowing through her. She could feel the connections between all present, their fears, their hopes, their potential for unity. Choose now, she called out, her voice carrying the weight of prophecy. Stand divided and fall, or unite and fight. One by one, the representatives stepped forward. The quantum collective's light merged with dragon fire. Silicon beings formed living shields around organic allies. Ancient enemies stood shoulder to shoulder, united against a greater threat. Dracon's laugh echoed as the gate's power grew. You only prove our weakness. The strong stand alone. No, Zora countered, raising her hands as the mark's power surged. The strong stand together. The final battle erupted across multiple dimensions. The Void Collective poured through Dracon's gate, while armies of united species fought back. Dragons flew alongside energy beings, their combined powers creating new forms of combat never before seen. Zara stood at the heart of it all, the mark's power flowing outward, creating bridges between allies, strengthening their bonds. Each species contributed its unique strengths. The quantum collective's ability to process infinite battle scenarios, the silicon being's unbreakable defense formations, the dragon's raw power guided by millennia of wisdom. But the void pressed forward, consuming everything in its path. Draken watched from above, his hatred burning brighter than reason, even as the destruction he'd unleashed threatened to consume him too. Then Zara saw it, the pattern hidden in chaos, the solution written in the very prophecy that had brought her here. Her mark wasn't just a bridge between species, it was a key to something far more fundamental. The Convergence Gate works both ways, she realized aloud. We can't just fight the void. We have to show it another path. Understanding rippled through the united armies. The Mark's power reached out, not to destroy the void, but to transform it. Through the connections Zora had forged, every species contributed its unique perspective of existence, creating a symphony of life too complex and beautiful to consume. The Void Collective hesitated, experiencing for the first time something beyond hunger. The possibility of connection, of growth through unity rather than consumption. Thrykon, seeing his plan unravel, made one final desperate attempt. He dove toward Zora, claws extended. But his own followers, touched by the vision of unity, moved to stop him. In the struggle, the convergence gate slipped from his grasp. Zora caught it, the Mark's power merging with the ancient artifact. Together, they created something new, a bridge not just between species, but between ways of existing. The Void Collective, faced with an alternative to eternal hunger, began to transform. The battle ended not with destruction, but with transformation. The Void, touched by the combined life force of united species, became something new, a force for creation rather than consumption. Thrykon and his remaining followers, their hatred exhausted, faced the judgment of the United Council. In the aftermath, as the transformed void merged with normal space in shimmering auroras of possibility, Zora stood with representatives of all species. Her mark had evolved one final time, becoming a symbol not of prophecy fulfilled, but of endless potential for growth and unity. The prophecy never meant for me to save everyone, she told the assembled council. It meant for me to show that we could save ourselves, together. High Elder Varric nodded, his ancient eyes bright with new purpose. And so the bridge becomes a foundation, upon which we shall build a future none of us could have imagined alone. Above them, the triple suns of Celestia Prime shone on a changed galaxy. Species that had warred for millennia now worked together, exploring the possibilities created by their unity. The Void Collective, transformed by understanding, became a force for balance rather than destruction. And Zora, no longer just a hungry refugee or even the prophesied Starchild, took her place among the stars, not as a ruler or savior, but as a reminder that the greatest power lies not in standing alone, but in building bridges between all forms of life. The mark on her wrist pulsed one final time, not with prophecy or power, but with promise. The promise of a future where unity was not just a dream, but a reality written in the light of distant stars.